30 years back, India and China had roughly the same population and roughly the same level of per capita income, but China has surged ahead. It's grown at 10, 12%. It's now per capita incomes are 2.5 to 3 times India's. But what is interesting is the different approach to population in these two countries, because both these countries in the 60s and 70s were under enormous global pressure to moderate their populations. India was among the first countries in the world to have a family planning program. And while the Chinese in the beginning didn't believe in that because they believed, Mao believed the more people, the better for the revolution or whatever, by the late 70s, they also took this whole issue of population very seriously, and they implemented what we all know is the one-child policy. Now, the one-child policy gave China accelerated benefits because it accelerated their demographic dividend because the population growth rate started slowing down. And to some extent, the vitality in the last 30 years in China happened because of the demographic dividend of the one-child policy. But now, as we approach the end of the Chinese demographic dividend, we start seeing the unintended consequences of that vast piece of social engineering. Number one, rapid aging. China is going to age very rapidly. It's going to have over 400 million old people very soon without a proper social security or a pension system. But there have been other consequences of a one-child policy, which is the preponderance to have male children, and therefore the male-female ratio is skewed. Infant obesity because you have one child and you pamper them with ice cream and chocolates and all that stuff. And individualistic behavior because you're not used to having siblings. So these are all consequences of vast social engineering. Now in India, we had a family planning which was, for most of the time, was a voluntary effort, except for the brief period during the so-called emergency that was started by Indira Gandhi in 1975, when she suspended civil liberties. And under the leadership of her son, Sanjay Gandhi, who later died in a plane crash, they had a massive coercive plan for population control. And this is the only time in Indian history when there was a plan for population control where they actually went and, without taking the consent of the people, they had sterilization operations and so on and so forth because they wanted to control the population. The only problem was when she called an election in March of 1977, she lost resoundingly. And that was the last time any Indian politician tried to make family planning as a political issue because he was convinced that if he made family planning a political issue, he was bound to lose the election. And in fact, this sunk in so deeply into the Indian psyche that the Department of Family Planning was renamed as the Department of Family Welfare because they didn't want to be associated with family planning anymore. And therefore, India's population growth has also come down. But it has not come down because of social engineering. It has come down because of more organic reasons, because literacy levels went up, because female literacy levels went up, because marriage age went up, infant mortality went down, and therefore there was less pressure on families to have more children. Urbanization came in, so people were going to cities and they didn't have the time or the space to have children, so on and so forth. So India's population growth has dropped from 2% in the 60s to 1.5% now. But net-net, this difference in the approach, the fact that China chose a coercive one-child policy and India had this more laissez-faire kind of thing, has led to the fact that China enjoyed its demographic dividend for the last 30 years, and India is going to enjoy its demographic dividend for the next 30 years. And therefore, the fact that India is having its demographic dividend now, and is the only country in the world which is going to have a demographic dividend, makes its circumstances extremely unique. So it'll be the only young country in an aging world, and that obviously has huge opportunities as well as huge challenges.